Today on Collider Movie Talk, we're talking about this fantastic new project from Kevin Hart, superhero stuff, and we're talking about Neill Blomkamp moving off Robocop Returns. All of that and more on today's Collider Movie Talk. Look at that logo doing its thing. Look at Slam! Movie Talk. That's what it's talking about there. I love that. I love watching. It gets me excited. Hey, everyone. Well, I'm sliding into the host chair on this lovely Thursday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us live for Collider Movie Talk. Perry Nemiroff is at the North Bend, second annual North Bend Film Festival up there with Haley Fauch there in Washington, Pacific Northwest. They are doing a live episode of their Collider Witching Hour podcast there. So if you're in that area, roaming around, wondering what to do, go find it, get a ticket, and go watch them. It's always a good time. Well, we got a lot of stories to talk about, like I said, but I couldn't do it solo. So let's meet the homies riding shotgun with me. Right there, Jay Washington. How are you, brother?
I'm very happy to be here.
I don't know what that accent is. I don't want to get in trouble.
You never seen the original Coming to America?
I don't want to get in trouble. Sure, that sounds good. All right, and then Simon Thompson, man with the actual accent. How are you?
I don't think I've ever been referred to as a homie.
Well, it's always a first time.
I'll take it.
This show is off to a great start, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do this.
I'm a homie.
I'm becoming fast friends with Simon, and he is my homie. That'll be that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Another homie of Jay Washington's, Kevin Hart. He has got himself a film that is coming out here. It's described as a high concept superhero comedy called Night Wolf. Now, he's just come off grossing over $100 million with that film, The Upside, which was, I think, a remake of The Invincibles, the French film that's actually really good if you haven't seen that. He co-starred in The Upside with Bryan Cranston. Kevin, he signed on to produce this thing, and it's through STX, as I said. They acquired Night Wolf as a pitch from Detective Pikachu screenwriters Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit. Now, here's the premise. Sit down for the premise, because this is great. It's drawn comparisons to Meet the Parents, but Kevin Hart plays a man who meets his future father-in-law for the first time, only to discover that he is secretly the superhero known as the Night Wolf. Oh, sweet Mary, Mother of God. Jay Washington, you hear this news about Kevin Hart producing. You know, he's kind of bounced back off of the controversy from a few months ago or last year, and he is now back into the good graces with a lot of movie-going audiences, and a lot of people have stepped up for him. Jumanji 2 is coming out now soon, and you've got this project lined up, a superhero comedy, an original superhero comedy. What are your thoughts on this?
It's Kevin Hart being smart. And you listen to the people. We were talking about this before we went on air. People are into Marvel and DC. That's a given. But people also want other comic book properties. Some original IPs, others readaptations. The Boys, for instance. Everybody loves that on Amazon Prime. But if you take something like this and you make it original and it's unique and it can grab people, then that's what's going to count the most. You're going to have the comedic twist behind it because you're going to have Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart. He's not going to be a character. He'll be Kevin.
Right.
Yes. Kevin will be Kevin. You can tell him I said that spanking name. But he'll be Kevin. But the thing is, who do you cast around him? That's what's going to make this movie the biggest part behind it. Yeah, he'll be the star, be the focal point because of the name, but it's the surrounding cast that really is going to make this.
Yeah, and this is part of a deal. He signed with STX, right? He has a couple of movies here, Simon. It's with Heartbeat Productions. They produced 2 new comedy projects, which would mean Kevin Hart would be the star of both of these projects. But he has worked with the studio before. It's the third project that Hart has developed with them. So this is a relationship that could yield some fruit here. Do you like this?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's something of a lucky charm for STX, to be honest with you. And Kevin Hart has been in franchises, but doesn't have his own franchise. So this, to me, especially with Heartbeat, this could be their first franchise. And we do love those superhero franchises. I think this is really good. Even if in a second or third one, he steps out and it's another couple, I think this has legs. Also, the fact that, like I say, he's a really good omen for STX. And the audience who go to see STX movies or often don't go to see STX movies, they do warm to him. So whatever that demo is great. He also, whether they want to go hard R with this or they want to go PG-13, there's an audience that's going to come with Kevin. I personally would like to see this go more towards the hard R.
I do.
Interesting.
We see a lot of family Kevin, but I do love a good bit of profanity in a movie. I find creative profanity almost Oscar worthy. It's like dirty Shakespeare. So I would absolutely say 100% go for R-rated. But one thing that bothers me, Hollywood does know that there's more than one funny African-American guy, right?
No, they don't. No, they don't. Not more than one at a time.
As much as I love Kevin Hart, it's kind of like, It's always Kevin Hart. And
Right.
I was just saying, I saw Soul Plane for the first time in the longest time.
My God,
came
why?
up on Amazon. Well, it came up on Amazon Prime.
You do not disrespect
It came
that.
up-
That is a hood classic,
It's
ladies
a
and gentlemen. If you have not
That's
seen
you
Soul
gotta get out of that
Plane,
hood. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
But true, but he's been around for a long time. But really, his star is really in ascension. So I think you've got this audience that Kevin has had for the longest time,
Right.
and he's got this new audience that's come through the last couple of years. And you really can that potentially, at times when things aren't landing at the box office, that's a market fully made. But key part of this is not just going to be Kevin Hart, but who is cast around him.
Yeah.
So that family casting, he's going to be the potential son-in-law. He's dating, an individual. I'm assuming it's a woman. And so who's going to be the parents? That I think is going to be a really, really crucial bit of casting.
Yeah, so let's move on to that. Well, first of all, let me say I love this idea. I think
Yeah.
this is great for Kevin. I love watching his stuff, and I hear your point. Like, okay, we go from Eddie to Keenen Ivory to there isn't that many. They go from one to the other to the next.
there's
And
never
Chris
allowed to
Rock-
be more than one at the same time.
Exactly.
And we've done it with women with Tiffany Haddish.
Yeah.
We've done it with larger
Right,
women
right.
where it's like, it's Rebel Wilson or it's Melissa McCarthy
Right.
where it's the funny larger woman.
Right.
So it's not just black guys that Hollywood does this with.
Right. And so you see that. But look, with Kevin, I think also Kevin is an incredible hustler. He's a fantastic worker. He gets, and he's willing to do, like he's got like that Ryan Seacrest blood. He just sleeps 3 hours a night or something like that because he has so many projects in motion that you got to give a little bit of credit, at least to Kevin, to lining this up for himself. And it's a new kind of approach to a comedy as well. Because sometimes what these comedic actors of any color or race fall into is the same systemic, same old stuff. And you get bored with watching the same comedies. I think what Kevin is realizing now is there are ways to branch out that are interesting, from Central Intelligence to Jumanji to something like this. These are new, interesting ways to show his comedy chops off that aren't the same vehicles that we've seen before in the past. Now, let's jump into the second question here. Who would you look at to cast as this father-in-law? Because this idea of discovering your father-in-law's superhero, as if the chips aren't stacked against you enough. Now you've got to deal with the fact that the man is a superhero.
Who you got?
My choice out of the box, because he never does comedy, they never ask him to do comedy, Denzel. I could see Denzel being a superhero and Denzel going, oh, you talking to my daughter? You talking to my daughter? And all of this would be very fun, just to see him as a superhero too, because he'd be like, my man. I just would love to see that as a superhero.
You just want the whole movie to go,
do the whole.
my man.
That's what I'm going to do. I'll just go, I just would love to see that with Denzel as a superhero. Who do you guys got?
You go first.
Damn it, Danny Glover.
Oh, all right.
Danny Glover is hilarious when you put him in comedic movies.
Sure.
And can you imagine? He still moves around like he's older, yes, but to see him in that role, just to come at Kevin Hart, if not Danny Glover, Wesley Snipes, I'm gonna stick up with Wesley all the time.
Wesley could be very
It's really interesting because both you guys, I think they're great choices. And I originally thought Sam Jackson, and I suddenly thought actually we're massively assuming that the person that Kevin Hart's going to be dating
This is
black.
true.
Is black.
This is
That's
true.
fair point.
What I think would be even greater is if you have someone who is super white.
Okay.
So it's Kevin Hart, an African American guy dating a white girl, but the dad is someone like who is maybe like a banker or someone who is really lame, and then you find out they're the superhero. But what about going someone that kind of crosses that, maybe like a Jeff Bridges or a Sam Elliott, or going a little bit younger and doing maybe like a Brendan Fraser or a Dolph Lundgren? I mean, those are kind of going for an older white guy. I think would be really
Would
interesting.
Dolph be able to handle the comedic element? Like I could see a Dolph Lundgren, but I think the
Have you seen Masters of the Universe?
Well, that movie was a comedy when it was being typed up on paper.
No, but seriously, he's done comedy before. If you remember, Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Yeah.
A lot of humor in that with him and Brandon Lee in the 90s. I mean, not necessarily him particularly, but someone of that kind of ilk. Sam Elliott has never really done that. He hasn't done that kind of action comedy since maybe Fatal Beauty with Whoopi Goldberg in the 90s, which, was called something else in some other markets. But I think we make this massive assumption that it's going to be a black guy.
Right.
I think it would be even funnier if it was a nerdy white guy. Maybe someone like Will Ferrell or Rob Riggle or someone like that.
We saw the chemistry with him and Will Ferrell before in Get Hard.
Get Hard.
Give me John Hamm, and here's why I say that. Have you seen Tag?
Yeah, tag.
He is hilarious in tag.
Okay.
Good point.
What he does, he could pull that off if we're going to go that route.
Okay, let me read you some of the ones from the fans here. Collider Fans says, let's get The Rock to be the father-in-law and put him back in this situation.
It's too easy to say that one, right?
But we've seen Rock do the pictures of him holding the baby Kevin Hart with the face. That is brilliant stuff. So that could be funny. C. Har agrees with me about Denzel. Jenna James says, how about Lawrence Fishburne as the father?
Yo, I would love to see him curse Kevin Hart
with that voice of his, and that barrel chest of his now.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be funny.
Also, Lawrence Fishburne doesn't get a lot of credit for being a really funny guy.
Yes.
You gotta watch Blackish. Watch Blackish.
Yeah, right.
But many times in junkets, his humor is so sharp and like downbeat. He would be like the equivalent to like a black version of Robert De Niro, Meet the Families, if we're going to make that kind of comparison.
Yes.
Which is the kind of vibe and role would be perfect.
It's got that comparison there with Meet the Parents. One last one. This is from Michael Jubila. He says Eddie Murphy or Michael Keaton.
Michael
I can see Michael Keaton,
right?
I like that.
Two comedians, because Keaton is a comedian.
Yeah. Yep.
And we saw what he did. You know, we already know him as Batman. We know what he did in Birdman, but what he did in Spider-Man Homecoming stands out the most.
Absolutely. And even if you've seen like other stuff that he's done, even go back to Jackie Brown, where he's kind of played that guy.
Which is on Netflix now.
Which is on Netflix now. You can see Michael Keaton kind of playing that.
What about someone going really sort of, as we're going, obviously these guys are really hot again at the moment, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, guys who've never done that kind of comedy. The closest we've seen Brad is Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Right. But
I would like to see Leo do something. I would like to see him step out of those series.
But it's not age appropriate, is it? You'd have to age them up, right, to be the father-in-law.
You want an older dude.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless it's a stepfather-in-law.
Okay, if that be the case, give us the black man that never ages. Ladies and gentlemen, camera on me. Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman. That's for sure. Oh my God, Morgan Freeman is a father-in-law superhero. Would be funny as hell. Okay, God. All right, next up on the show, we're going to talk about the news about Neill Blomkamp and him moving off the Robocop Returns film. But first, we're going to do some plugs. And hey, don't forget to chat with us on the live chat that's going on there. I might read a couple of the questions at the end there, hopefully, if we have enough time. But first, brand new Jedi Council is dropping today at 5 o'clock. You can watch that thing there and enjoy it. It's Emma Fyffe, Mark Riley, and Ken Knapsack talking about all the latest from the world of Star Wars, including that Ewan McGregor story about Disney Plus. Is it true? Is it not true? We have a person on the panel who claims it is true. We'll see. We'll see if it's true. And also tomorrow, a new episode of my podcast, The Deep Cut, drops on Collider Conversations. Jason Inman joins me to talk about his book, Super Soldiers, which is his experience in war and how he discovered superheroes and villains and which ones kind of relate back to that experience and which ones he considers to be the best, and some honorable mentions as well. It's a fun conversation. We talk about his experience in the military and serving in Iraq as well. All right, let's move on to our second story. That's a Neill Blomkamp story, as we were saying here. He is no longer directing Robocop Returns. In July of 2018, Collider reported that District 9 and Chappie director Neill Blomkamp was set to helm this film. He was on board to produce it and executive produce it with Ed Neumeyer and Michael Miner. And Justin Rhodes was going to write this and was retooling a script that Neumeyer and Miner had wrote decades ago. Blomkamp originally told Deadline, the original definitely had a massive effect on me as a kid. I loved it then, and it remains a classic in the end of the 20th century sci-fi catalog with real meaning under the surface. Hopefully, that is something we can get closer to in making the sequel. But now, apparently, he is off the project. He tweeted this last night, quote, "Off Robocop, I am shooting a new horror thriller that an MGM can't wait / needs to shoot Robocop now. Excited to watch it in the theater with other fans." Simon, I go to you first on this. Neill Blomkamp, this is the second time he's kind of been moved off an 80s property. If we think about Aliens as well, his rumored Aliens he was going to do.
Which I was psyched about. I can't deny.
A lot of people were. What do you think about this news here?
I'm disappointed. I was really looking forward to seeing what his vision was going to be. It's something that he's been very close to and worked on for a lot of time. He clearly had a lot of knowledge of, a lot of passion for. But to be honest with you, now he's off it. I don't know if I'm so interested in the project because I'm a big fan of Robocop. I love Robocop. And what's really interesting is Robocop is a movie that some of my nephews who are like early teens have never seen. It's the one movie that they want to see when their parents will let them when they're old enough. That is a legacy movie.
Yeah.
So I really want to see, a continuation of that story that is really worthy of the original Robocop movie. Robocop 2 was good. Robocop 3 was absolutely abysmal, and the TV show was terrible. So I really want to make sure that if they are going to do this, maybe delay it for a bit and make sure you get the right person for this, because after the last remake, you don't get another shot at this if you mess it up. You've really got to get it right. So I'm excited for it. I'd buy it for $1. But it has to be the right guy.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be picking up after the original Robocop ended. So once again, one of these 80s properties that people are going back to, or 70s, if you include Halloween, where they're erasing the sequels and kind of picking up where the original that it kind of got into people's hearts and people love picks up. So what do you think about this is an interesting thing, because it's not like Neill's been knocking out of the park with his other films. Is this a thing where maybe there's creative differences, or what do you think happened here, Jay?
It probably is creative differences, because a lot of people hear Neill Blomkamp, and the first thing you're like, he can do this because District 9 and Chappie, he can do this. And then it's like, well, is it going to be the same Robocop we want from the 80s?
Right.
Because Joel Kinnaman as Robocop in 2014 was the worst thing I ever saw in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why when they said, oh, he's going to be a Suicide Squad, I was like, well, I know I don't really need to see this. But you might have creative differences, because it goes further than saying what he wanted to talk about what this movie to be. He wanted to be about a man trying to regain his humanity. And I get it. Yeah, that's what we got in the first Robocop, but that's not what this is about at all at the most. It's about him being a cop, having to take on the corrupt corporation and still save his city at the same time. Yeah, he deals with his wife. He stalks his wife, with somebody need to put a restraining order on Robocop. Nobody ever thought about that.
Just trying to figure out where he belongs.
Program that this prime directive. Stop stalking your wife. Like, he does that. But it's going to be into, like, a lot of times if he has this vision and then they're like, this isn't what we really want to go with. And it's like, well, this other movie, MGM is going to let me do this and do what I want to do with it. Then of course you just slide over to that property.
Well, this is kind of, and I'm looking at this is a little bit like, if you're a director, I get you have your own point of view and you can be a bit creative, shall we say, or avant-garde, and studios sometimes do have a hard time with that. But this is now currently this phase of, or this era of filmmaking is very director driven. Directors are putting butts in seats, not stars anymore like they did before. So if Neill should be using this to his advantage, but he's been moved off the Aliens thing. He now is moved off the Robocop thing. He was going to do a disaster film with Chris Evans that never took off. And he's offering no details about this horror thriller film that he's supposedly working on. So why, this has, and not to make a comparison to Orson Welles, but this has these Orson Welles vibes to them, in that, like, the studio is either moving you off or saying you can't work with you, or taking your film from you and re-editing it.
But also, a lot of times these studios are hiring people for that exact reason, because they do have a very clear and specific vision of the way they want to do things and the way they want to see things. And I think sometimes you get to an end of the road with that and it just doesn't, sort of the cogs of the wheel don't fit together. And that big wheel that's the studio ain't going to go away. So it's going to be the smaller wheel that's going to take his cogs somewhere else. And that could be what happened here.
And that is a big thing. That is a big thing. You have these directors with a vision. All directors have artistic integrity and artistic license to what they want to do. But at the end of the day, it's the studio's call no matter what, because they are the main ones financing this. They are the ones putting their name behind it. Yeah, it'll say directed by, but this is that studio's film. That film flops. You'll look at the directors for a moment, but you'll look at that studio for having that flop.
Yeah, well, we're looking at directors. You mentioned that, Jay. Well, what would you, let me ask you guys, who would you want to slide in here now and take over? Who do you think is capable of sliding in and taking over Robocop Returns with the premise that it's picking up after the original ended, and that the original suit is supposed to come back as well?
They're going to have to Febreze that.
Oh,
they're going to have to Febreze that.
That suit probably smells like
stanky.
The recession.
Do you want to go first on this, or shall I go first?
You can go first on this.
Okay, I'm thinking, and this is because someone who I know loves that movie, grew up with that movie, and has a really good, strong heritage of doing great action. Gareth Evans from The Raid.
Nice choice.
Okay. Gareth loves Robocop.
Okay.
And I think with what he's done with characterization and looping that in with really spectacular action and budgets that are not exceptionally large, which studios like, Gareth Evans would be a pretty solid choice for me.
I like that choice. What about you, Jay?
He's also Welsh. So
I'm going to go out on a limb on this one.
Huh?
I'm gonna go out on a limb on this.
Okay.
John Woo.
Woo!
I want the action.
Oh,
I want the action.
Does Hollywood want Woo back?
Yeah,
I know that's the issue. I know that's the big issue.
Right.
But I want that action that he brings to films if we're getting this RoboCop picking up because it can't look. Of course, it can't look like the 80s movie,
right.
but it still needs to have that 80s feel. It needs to have that campiness a lot that we had. Again, I'd buy that for $1.
Right.
Certain things like that. I want to see another dude get dropped in toxic ways and go, help me. I want to see things like that going forward. And I feel like I understand that Hollywood is like, we really don't want to deal with John Woo anymore. I get it.
Right.
But that's who I would give a chance to.
Well, his last film did really well, but once again, he went back to his roots. And that's kind of what works for him. Here's my crazy thought, Michael Bay. I know people don't want to talk about it, but he resuscitated that Transformers franchise and made $4.5 billion.
But see, now here's why I have to argue. And I'm sorry, Simon. Of course you're gonna go back to Transformers because you're the most diehard Transformers fan. No matter. Let's just be real. You want Michael Bay? All we gonna see is RoboCop with explosions every 8 seconds. No.
Is the studio going to make money?
I don't want to see the rotating shot on RoboCop's face while he's taking the helmet off. I don't need to see those things.
Do you know what, though? I don't think you're far off the point.
That's my homie right there.
I'm going to go. I'm going to give you half a Bay.
Okay. Half a Bay. All right.
Which is a bit. And I'm going to give you Travis Knight because of Bumblebee.
Fair. That's fair. I like that idea.
Travis has never done anything that is R-rated.
Yeah.
He's always done animated, but again, with characterization we saw from Bumblebee, there are some super sweet action sequences in there.
Fair. I accept that.
That I think could potentially be. And he works well with Michael, and not a lot of people do.
Yeah, as long as maybe Michael can executive produce, that'd be fine. But no, another person to throw out, one last, I think Patty Jenkins would be a fantastic choice.
Yes, she doesn't give much credit as she deserves.
Exactly.
She deserves that credit for that,
She's just stepping out of it. She's going to eventually be stepping out of an 80s film, so she's already steeped in that kind of mindset, so maybe that could help and parlay quickly into a RoboCop Returns situation here.
Do we set it in the 80s, though? That's the big, because you just said
it's picking up right where it left off.
It could pick up where it left off and still be again. Halloween did that. It picked up decades later. It's still picking up. You see what I'm saying? Are we picking up in that time frame?
That's going to be a lot for them to explain about why. Like, how long is Robocop? If Robocop's been going on for 30 years, then what's the problem? Because he's the only one. But the whole problem with Robocop in the first film is the fact that thing shouldn't even exist.
Okay, if you're gonna do RoboCop, if you're gonna do Patty Jenkins, excuse me.
Yeah.
My brain just clicked. I'll go for one of my good friends.
Okay.
Lexi Alexander.
Oh, that's good.
Give it to my homegirl Lexi.
I like that.
Give it to my homegirl Lexi.
I mean, Paul Verhoeven's looking for work.
I mean, if you give it back to the guy who did it.
There's a reason for that. Let's move on to some questions. We'll see what happens. Okay, we'll see who's going to take over, and we'll see if this supposed horror thriller of Neill Blomkamp's ever sees the light of day. We'll see. I mean, like we said, some people defend Chappie. I think he did Elysium. I was not a fan of Elysium, and
I preferred it to Chappie.
I love District 9.
District 9, of course. Everyone loves District 9. But the problem is he hasn't quite hit those heights since.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to some questions from you all, the fans. Just a couple here, see if we can get some done. Okay, should Disney... Oh, wait. How about Jordan Peele taking over RoboCop Returns?
Ooh.
He doesn't have to direct it himself, but he could spearhead it like he's doing with Candyman.
Ooh.
Could do.
That could work.
Okay.
That could work.
All right.
Because it would keep that gore element for sure.
Absolutely. How about Kevin Smith?
No.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I can't see Kevin doing that.
I love Kevin Smith, but that is not something I would...
There's no reason for Jason Mewes to just pop up in RoboCop.
Snoochie Boochies, you're coming with me.
You're right.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. This is a J. Scott Friel, a big fan of the show. Would still like to get the panel's expectations for the upcoming H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, Color Out of Space, starring Nick Cage and Tommy Chong. Look, I'll tell you my expectations. Yes. Absolutely. Nick Cage and Tommy Chong, that sounds like a madness type of film.
Yeah.
Sounds like
I'm all for it.
It sounds like all the craziness, all the insanity, and a little bit of marijuana. Yes.
All of it.
I mean, to me, that sounds like, I don't know, a bad idea. I mean, it's kind of one of those things.
It'll be cool while they're shooting it.
I mean, it's going to be fun to make. But I honestly don't know who's been waiting for this movie.
That's true. That's a fair point.
I don't know.
One last question is from Alan Payne. Do you think they'll make a Thundercats live action movie?
please God make this movie.
You think so, huh?
Because if they don't do it, they'll do Gargoyles. One of the two of them will get made.
Yeah, Greg Weissman's Gargoyles.
Yeah, one or two of them will get made. But I really want Thundercats because I believe you can do it and do it justice. Have the right, it's the right amount of CGI, but mixed with primarily live action. You don't want, man, look.
Jay thirsty for some Chitara, boy.
I don't even care about, I don't want to see, forget that. Chitara is dope, though, however. Give me Pumaira. But I want to see what they would do with Mum-Ra.
Oh,
that is my biggest thing, is to see what they would do with Mum-Ra.
Yeah.
Because of the whole transformation from the mummy to the big burly monster. Like, I want to see that.
I'm down with that.
Kevin Hart could be Schnoff.
I'm out.
I mean, I'm just saying. I would be. Seriously, that would be great casting. Also, when Master Universe, Kevin Hart should be Orko. I'm just saying. But no, seriously,
Kevin Hart is
I would be so down with the Thundercats movie. I genuinely love that. And there aren't many animated series that I own on DVD. I own DVDs. I'm all about the hard format.
That's fair.
Seriously, that and Dungeons and Dragons are two things that I absolutely love, and I'm very excited about the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
But Thundercats, seriously, I go back and I revisit that. I'm in my 40s, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That and the Silverhawks. If you've never seen the Silverhawks,
it's good too.
Because you got to have a live action Monstar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll throw in Thunderbirds. All right, well there you go.
Tiger Sharks.
Sure. All right.
Jason the World Warriors. I don't know.
Wow. What is happening?
Brave Star.
Matthew Starr. All right. That's enough. We got to go. Thank you so much to Jay Washington and Simon Thompson.
Thank you so much.
This has been a fun episode of Collider Movie Talk. Hope you all enjoyed it as well. Please like and retweet this episode and tell people about Collider Movie Talk. Always a positive. Simon, one last thing to plug. Go ahead.
And if you are into movie quizzes and you're in Los Angeles, you really have to try out the quiz that's been a massive success in London for 14 years. You're going to need a bigger boat if you can buy your tickets at film-quiz.com. Seriously, it is a big deal in London. We're bringing it here to LA. Be that person who's the first person to go along and is like, hey, this is kind of cool. Right. Be that guy on Twitter.
There you go. That's good to go. That's from my homie, so you got to listen to him. All right, we want to thank Adam Smith in the booth over there, and of course that on the live chat helping us out today. And tomorrow we'll have another episode of Movie Talk. It's a pre-taped one, but Mark Andreyko and Silas Lesnick join me to talk about a Joker and a couple of other things there on the show, so don't miss that. And then Perry Nemiroff will be back on Monday live, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for another episode of Collider Movie Talk. You guys take care of yourselves.